was hired to protect a billion-dollar aircraft, but when the CEO's son demanded he approve a dangerous test flight, this single dad refused and resigned the night before takeoff. What happened the next morning shocked the entire company. Before we reveal the truth, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and stay until the end to discover how one brave decision changed everything. Michael Carter had learned early that being a single father meant making difficult choices without knowing whether they would ever pay off. For 12 years, he had worked long hours, taken extra shifts, and quietly sacrificed his own comfort. Oh, his son, Noah, could have a better future. They lived in a modest house outside Columbus, Ohio, where Michael spent most evenings helping Noah with homework or repairing something around the house. Michael had built his career in aircraft maintenance through patience and experience rather than connections. So when he received an offer from one of America's most respected aerospace companies, he believed his life was finally moving in the right direction. On his first morning, Michael arrived at the company's massive aerospace facility before sunrise. The building was already alive with engineers, technicians, managers, and security personnel preparing for another demanding day. Michael carried a small folder containing his employment documents and walked through the lobby with quiet confidence. He was impressed by the scale of the operation, but he reminded himself not to be distracted. He had not come there to chase a title. He had come to provide stability for Noah. After completing orientation, an assistant approached him and said that the CEO wanted to see him immediately. Michael followed her upstairs, unaware that the meeting would change his career before it had even begun. Daniel Brooks, the company's CEO, sat behind a large glass desk overlooking the hangars below. He was a respected businessman, known for turning the company into a major player in advanced aviation technology. Daniel reviewed Michael's resume carefully before looking up. "Your experience is stronger than I expected," he said. Michael thanked him. Daniel then closed the folder and leaned back in his chair. "There is one thing you should understand before you start." Michael waited. Daniel explained that Michael would report directly to his son, Ethan Brooks, who was leading the company's newest experimental aircraft program. Ethan was young, intelligent, ambitious, and determined to prove himself. Michael did not react negatively. He simply nodded and said, "I'm here to do my job." Daniel appreciated the answer, but there was something about his expression that made Michael curious. It seemed as though the CEO wanted to say more, but decided against it. Ethan had recently taken responsibility for the experimental aircraft program, and the project had attracted significant attention from investors and industry partners. The aircraft was designed to demonstrate a new generation of high-speed aviation technology. If the first test flight succeeded, Ethan would receive enormous credit. Michael understood immediately that the pressure surrounding the project was probably intense. Still, he believed pressure was never an excuse for ignoring safety. During his first few weeks, Michael worked quietly and observed everything. He inspected maintenance records, reviewed technical reports, and spent hours inside the hangar examining the aircraft. His experience allowed him to notice details that younger employees sometimes overlooked. At first, Ethan seemed pleased with him. He appreciated Michael's knowledge and often asked him to inspect complicated systems. But Michael soon noticed something troubling. The test schedule was being accelerated repeatedly. Several procedures that normally required additional verification were being shortened. Some engineers appeared uncomfortable, but they remained silent because Ethan had made it clear that delays would not be tolerated. One afternoon, Michael discovered an inconsistency in a maintenance report involving one of the aircraft's critical systems. He checked the records twice and then personally inspected the component. The problem was not catastrophic, but it required additional testing before the aircraft could safely fly. Michael documented his findings and brought them to Ethan. "I think we should delay the test," he said calmly. Ethan barely looked up from his computer. "How long?" he asked. Michael explained that the additional inspection could take several days. Ethan immediately shook his head. "We don't have several days." Michael reminded him that the purpose of testing was to discover problems before they became dangerous. Ethan replied that the engineering team had already reviewed the system. Michael walked away without arguing, but he did not change his assessment. Over the next several days, he continued noticing small warning signs. A sensor reading required further calibration. Another inspection was completed faster than normal. A checklist contained an unexplained correction. None of the issues alone guaranteed failure, but together they created a pattern Michael could not ignore. He spoke with several engineers privately, and although they avoided criticizing Ethan directly, their expressions told him enough. They were worried too. Michael knew what could happen when small problems were allowed to become bigger ones. He had spent years around aircraft, and he understood that aviation did not forgive shortcuts. 3 days before the planned test flight, Ethan called a meeting with the maintenance and engineering teams. He announced that the aircraft would fly on schedule. Investors and media representatives were already expecting the demonstration. Ethan spoke confidently about the company's future and said the test would prove that their technology was ready for the next stage. When the meeting ended, Michael remained behind. He approached Ethan and carefully explained his concerns again. "I'm not saying the aircraft cannot fly," Michael said. "I'm saying we need to verify these systems before we put anyone in the air." Ethan's expression hardened. "You're here to maintain the aircraft, not question my decisions." Michael remained professional. "I understand my position," he replied, "but if I believe something is unsafe, I have a responsibility to say so." Ethan stared at him for several seconds before telling him to leave. Michael returned to the hangar and continued working. That evening, he called Noah from his car before driving home. Noah immediately asked how his new job was going. Michael smiled and told him it was going well. He did not tell his son about the argument. Noah was already proud of his father, and Michael did not want him worrying about something he could not control. Before ending the call, Noah said, "Dad, just remember what you always tell me. Do the right thing, even when nobody likes you for it." The words stayed with Michael the next morning. The first test flight was now only 24 hours away. Ethan summoned Michael to his office and placed a certification document on the desk. "Sign this," Ethan said. Michael read it carefully. The document confirmed that the aircraft had passed the required maintenance checks and was ready for flight. Michael looked through the attached records and immediately noticed that several of the concerns he had raised were still unresolved. He looked at Ethan. "I can't sign this." Ethan's voice became colder. "Think carefully. This is your first month here." Michael understood the threat behind the words, but he also understood the responsibility in front of him. Michael slowly pushed the document back across the desk. "I'm not willing to put someone's life at risk just to meet a schedule." Ethan stood up angrily. He told Michael that hundreds of people had worked on the aircraft and that one employee could not stop the entire program. Michael replied that one employee might be exactly the person who needed to speak when everyone else was afraid. The room fell silent. Ethan told him that if he refused to cooperate, he should consider his employment finished. Michael looked at the resignation form sitting nearby. He picked it up. He signed it and placed it on the desk. "Then I guess this is where my employment ends." Ethan stared at him in disbelief. Michael walked out calmly, knowing he had chosen his principles over his paycheck. Michael placed the paperwork on Ethan's desk and stood silently for a moment. The office was unusually quiet, despite